morning, Marsha. Good morning, ministers. Minister Lee, I'm going to ask you a two-part question because if you say yes, you will have to give me the other part of the answer. Is there a moratorium on issuing of MB for GPs, even if they're coming for replacement? If the answer is yes, have you went against the Council of Health and issued at least 2 MB to one clinic and deny others?
Repeat your question. Is there a moratorium on issuing what?
MBs for doctors that are coming to do replacement of for a clinic?
No. As far as I know, no. There's no moratorium. In other words, if a physician needs to be replaced on a temporary basis, right? And they submit a request for a replacement.
Let's say a clinic, for example, Dennewy Clinic submitted, or Dr. Mercure submitted a request for replacement.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a moratorium? Based on what I understand, there is a moratorium.
I'll double check.
And you have denied Dennewy,
sure.
Dr. Mercure more than once, but have been issuing to Dr. Dennewy, for example.
Again, I don't go into the specifics of individual requests. I do recall that a request has been submitted, and I don't believe there's a moratorium in place, but I will verify that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hilbert Hart.
Good morning. Minister Boosman, a question about the cooperation with St. Kitts and the arrest of Mr. Fortune. As far as I know, there is no extradition treaty between St. Martin and St. Kitts. Are you maybe working on getting something like that in place? Because he's not the first criminal from St. Kitts who comes to do bad things in St. Martin.
Yeah, correct. And that is what I meant when I referred to the regional cooperation, and especially with those countries in close proximity to us, where those type of arrangements and especially extradition would be worked on to try to materialize those, because it makes it very difficult in situations like these, and how you would then proceed, and sometimes situations then would end up taking years. The details of this particular one, it's being worked on, and when the delegation gets back from St. Kitts, if there is information available that can be dispersed to the media, then they would do that, be it the police via their release or the prosecutor. But indeed, you're totally correct with that, and more is being done to make sure that this type of cooperation is formalized in extradition treaties.
Thank you. Minister Gibson, good morning.
Mr. Har, you have not been here for a while, but procedures has changed.
You have one question?
No, you'll have to go to the next round.
Oh.
So now you have to pass the mic to Mr. Lyndon Brown. Okay? Lyndon Brown, BCN News.
Mr. Emmanuel? Over the past years, there was a problem at the Great Bay Harbor from the freshwater pond, the water that comes from St. Peter's, St. John, and sent its way to the Great Bay beach. Do you have any short-term plans to actually do something? Because every time there's a hurricane, a heavy rain, the tractor have to come to clear the waterway to the sea. Do you have any plan to do something permanent so that the same routine for years will stop?
No. You asked if I have any plans. No, I don't have any plans to change it, no. It's working all the time.
Bibi?
Thank you, Marsha. Minister Emmanuel, it's been a while now you've been saying that, asking that the some members of the Housing Development Foundation make their position available. The last time I progress. Can you give us an update?
Yes. What I can tell you is, at the present moment, there were 2 individuals who will be making their position available, and by doing that, it gives us room for more negotiation with other individuals, and that is ongoing now as we speak. Just this morning, briefly, I spoke to an individual who said that he's also working from his end, getting another individual to vacate their position. So it is still a work in progress, but very soon things will be different at the board level of housing. Yeah.
Hilbert Haar, today.
Minister Gibson, what is the status of the 2018 budget?
Good morning.
Draft budget.
Yeah, good morning. The status of the 2018 budget is very healthy. It has been passed by the Council of Ministers already, and it's now in the hands of the Council of Advice. Given the timing, it looks like we're ahead of the game, and that this year it will be in Parliament before September 1st.
Prime Minister Marlin, and the Pearl of China project, and the Pearl of China project, is something soon to happen in the farm construction?
The Pearl of China project is still an ongoing discussion, as we've reported several weeks ago. In order to solve the problems that they were encountering because of the location of the former Barbaron at the foot of Bel Air. There were issues with the size of the building, the height of the building, the density of the construction. So we had proposed to them to separate the business center and apartments from the actual hotel, casino, and other amenities, which they have agreed to. They have been in discussion with another property owner. They have reached agreement, and now they're working out the issues, let's say, surrounding the property as well. One of the challenges that we have on St. Martin is because of the limited amount of property that we have and planning permits that are necessary when people want to develop large portions or parcels of property. If you would take, for instance, the gated communities up the valley, Rice Hill, and these kind of areas, in order to develop an area, you can no longer, like in the past, just sell a piece of land to somebody and then they build a building. What you now need is like a planning permit, and in that planning permit, the Ministry of Romi will reach agreement with the developer, with the property owner, and say, well, you can build, the lots should be no more than or no less than 800 square meters or 700 square meters. You can't build higher than 2 or 3 floors. You can't build any commercial buildings on this section. This area is reserved for residential, etc., etc. So there is a planning permit in place for the property as well, and they need to see how logistically all fits in place. The developer for Pearl of China was recently in St. Martin. We've held discussions with him. He's met with the property owners, and the discussion is a work in progress. So to say that we'll have a groundbreaking next week or next month, no, it won't happen this quickly because of the discussions that are still taking place, but they're still very strongly committed to the realization of the project. Yesterday, I had a courtesy call from the Consul General of the Republic of China stationed in Curacao. He is going to China on vacation. He has like some 40 days vacation. Some will be combined with work. And in our discussions yesterday as well, the Pearl of China was one of the discussions. So there is a strong commitment for the project, and we have faith and confidence that it will be realized.
Hi, I'm Giuliani Roberts.
And I'm Amari Phillips, students of the BAC program.
Join us for a special edition of Inside Government, where we will be speaking to Honorable Minister Silveria Jacobs.
August 18th on this channel.
Bibi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcia. Minister Boseman, I would like for you to clarify if I heard exactly what you said last week. I believe one of my colleagues asked you about the Justice Academy. And if I heard what you said, is that that Justice Academy was never established? If I'm correct with what I understood, can you tell us, if you're working on establishing the Justice Academy as a foundation, what happened to all those police, customs, and everybody else, immigration officers, all of them that went to the Justice Academy and was given out a piece of paper as a certificate? If it was not established, is that recognized, those that were given out in the past?
Yeah, okay. Indeed, that is what I said the last time, and that is how it is. There's a difference between the formal establishment of an entity and the curriculum that was given there. If I'm not mistaken, I also mentioned that for the police, for instance, that the police trainings are done in collaboration and cooperation with the police academy in the Netherlands. So the curriculum and even teachers of the police academy are the ones who, along with local teachers who give the courses in that effect. So the diplomas, the certificates that are given for the police training are certificates recognized by the police academy in Holland. So that has nothing to do with whether the establishment is a foundation or not a foundation. To fit in within the structure of the government of St. Martin, be it as a department or as a foundation. You have, for instance, the Philipsburg Jubilee Library is a foundation and has a particular task, but it is formalized as a foundation. And the Justice Academy, that formalization never took place. And that is the process that I said that I'm working on, and that most likely it would be formalized into a foundation, so that you would have a board, you would have to, it is easier to appoint staffing. An example, a lot of the teachers at the Justice Academy now, for instance, are employed by the police department or at a prison. So their legal status is not the Justice Academy. They are employees of the KPSM or the prison. So in that sense, you have to look at it, and it does not affect the training that takes place there, because the training that takes place based on legitimate curriculum. Once it is legally formalized here, then we are seeking and will get the certification from our Ministry of Education, by which then broader curriculum would be able to be given, which would then be recognized by the St. Martin Ministry of Education. So I hope I clarified it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Hilbert, you may go ahead and ask a question.
Minister Marlin, if I may interrupt. The appointment of the director of the airport. I had contact with Mike Granger yesterday about it. I asked him if that appointment was subject to an advice by the Corporate Governance Council. And he said, no, it isn't. Whereas in the recent report of the General Audit Chamber, they list the appointment of La Vega and Larry Donker as two that were subject to such advice. What's your opinion about that? Is that advice required or not? Because there seems to be a dispute about that.
Personal opinions of ministers or employees in a cabinet does not matter. The legal basis that is laid down in our ordinances and our, how you would say, in our ordinances or in the bodies governing our regulations that are in place. That is what matters. So if it is listed as one of the positions that need the advice of the Corporate Governance Council, the opinion of any minister, including the Prime Minister, doesn't matter. It's the law that has to be followed.
So, but what does the law say according to you? Let me put it like that.
Not according to me. The law says what the law says. You have read it, and I have read it, and it says that it has to be vetted by the Corporate Governance Council.
Minister Lee, it has been surfaced that the new hospital may not built in your time. Can you disappoint what is surfacing?
I'm not sure what you mean in my time. I plan on being around for quite a while. I can tell you that we are working diligently on the new hospital. The construction drawings, the discussions between the engineers, the designers, the architects is ongoing. We hope within, let's say, a week to 2 weeks that we will have the drawings ready to submit to VROMI for building permits. We are working diligently still on securing the financing. As I've mentioned, we're looking at a combination of financing between SZV and APS. They're still in the process of finalizing their due diligence, so they're asking for, reams and reams of papers and reports, and so we're in the process of complying with that. SZV actually should be completed, I hope, by this today, actually. And APS, again, within a matter of weeks. So once the financing is secured, the balance of the design, build, and maintain contract will go into effect, and I think the project is progressing well, and expect to be during my time.
I will allow one final question per media person before closing off. Bibi?
Thank you, Marsha. Minister Lee, yes, today is August 3rd and you're still in discussion with financing for the hospital. Other than APS and SZV that you're negotiating with, before you said you also had bankers. Can you tell me if there is a business plan for this hospital so that you can really negotiate financing?
Yes, there's a business plan for the new hospital. That business plan has been vetted by SOAB. They've issued an advice, a report on it, on the request, actually, I guess, of APS. There was a follow-up request for a, basically, I guess, what you would call a stress test. So, if certain assumptions don't pan out as you had projected in the business plan, what would be the consequence of those variances in your projections? That stress test is in the process of being completed. Again, so that's why I said we're really going through the due diligence process. I feel very comfortable with the process. So that's why we're continuing with the plan of 50-50. As you mentioned, originally there was a discussion about doing a split 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, including private banks. But the feeling was that more players involved in the financing, the more complicated the discussions. And also there were some additional costs associated with including private banks. And also by nature, private banks were perhaps looking for a shorter payback period, which would mean that the yearly payments would be higher for the hospital, which would impact their operational budget. So again, so far feedback has been positive, and so we're going on the assumption that that's how it will be financed.
Hilbert.
Thank you, Minister Emmanuel. A question about the site of Bakker Recycling down the road here. I've seen there's been done some cleanup, but it's still a big mess. Are you going to reclaim that whole property and clean it completely up, or are there some issues with, for instance, property rights of the company?
The first one, yes. Yeah, that's the initial idea, to eventually clean up the whole property. After all, it is government property. So, but there is some issues concerning the wrecks on the inside. They don't belong to government, they belong to, So there are some issues that we are working out right now with the individual, but you know he's incarcerated. So getting a representative on his behalf to deal with certain issues, because the equipment that is used to crush doesn't belong to the individual. So there's two parties that we are dealing with, we are talking to settle that matter, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Minister Boseman, do the Ministry of Justice in St. Martin have any contact with the Caribbean Court of Justice? And if not, are they planning to have some cooperation, seeing that time to time there might be more bigger issue that will happen, in St. Martin and have connection with the region?
Okay, I don't know directly that the ministry with the Court of Justice. I don't know of any direct contact. What we do have on is the regional cooperation between the different instances that are crime fighters, if I would call them that way. For instance, the police department meet regular, have meetings, and soon hopefully might be hosting one of those meetings with the regional chiefs of the police department. You have the Coast Guard with their corporations, etc., etc. So the different instances have the regional cooperation, and that is one of the main goals moving forward is to develop and establish that cooperation more as cross-border criminality is on the increase throughout the region, and all parties in the region clearly see the necessity where you have to work together to be able to mitigate those type of crimes.
Hi, I'm Juliani Roberts.
And I'm Omar Phillips, students of the BOP program.
Join us for a special edition of Inside Government highlighting the Business Outreach and Placement Program.
August 11th on this channel.
The following is a release from the Ministry of Justice. It concerns the General Weapons Authorization. The Minister of Justice herewith makes the following announcement. At the time, the Ministry of Justice put all requests for renewal of authorization for possession of firearms on hold pending the adoption of a new restrictive weapons policy and the establishment of a weapons advisory committee that is to advise the Minister on the applications received. The new weapons policy was adopted in November 2016 and was subsequently published in the National Gazette of November 25, 2016. The policy is also available for perusal at the Secretariat of the Ministry of Justice on the ATH Illage Road No. 8 in Phillipsburg. Meanwhile, the Weapons Advisory Committee set up by the Minister of Justice, in which the Public Prosecutor's Office and the police are represented, started the process of handling the large number of applications for permission to carry a weapon. The minister wishes to prevent that persons whose firearms have been registered with the police and who have proof of having submitted a request for renewal of their weapons permit, but who, while awaiting the decision on their application, are still in possession of their firearm due to the delay in decision-making, run the risk of being fined and prosecuted for illegal weapon possession. Therefore, the Minister grants these persons, after consulting with and obtaining the consent of the Weapons Advisory Committee, from the date of this notice until the date on which a decision is made on their application, but no later than December 31st, 2017, a license to have their firearms in their possession. This general license is deemed to have been granted under the same conditions as under which they have been previously granted a license for the firearm. The public is hereby informed that anyone who is in possession of a gun or ammunition without being licensed to do so should hand over the gun to the police under the Firearms Ordinance. Also, if a license holder dies, his survivors must hand over the firearm as well as the ammunition to the police.
Hi, I'm Juliani Roberts.
And I'm Omar Phillips, students of the BOP program.
Join us for a special edition of Inside Government highlighting the Business Outreach and Placement Program.
August 11th on this channel.
2017 Atlantic hurricane season storm names: Arlene, Brett, Cindy, Dawn, Emily, Franklin, Gert, Harvey, Irma, Jose, Katia, Lee, Maria, Nate, Ophelia, Felipe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, Whitney. The season officially begins on June 1st and will end on November 30th. Be prepared. Remember, it only takes one to make it a bad hurricane season.
Family law, criminal law, labor law, corporate law, immigration law, electoral law, tax law, environmental law, inheritance law. The law matters to you. A joint venture between the Department of Communication and the University of St. Martin. The lecture series, The Law Matters to You, is aimed at informing and providing the general public of St. Martin about the different laws. We invite you to visit the official government website at www.stmartingov.org for details on upcoming lectures. The Law Matters to You, bringing the law closer to the people.